I woke up choking on my own spit. The Detroit winter pressed against the windows like something alive, rattling the loose panes, finding every crack in the walls of my studio apartment. My head pounded with that familiar rhythm, the percussion section of Withdrawal playing its morning concert inside my skull. I rolled off the couch where I'd passed out, my cheek peeling away from the cracked leather with a sound like tearing paper. 3 empty bottles of Old Crow scattered across the coffee table. 4 days of mail I hadn't opened piled against the door. The laptop screen glowed dimly in the corner, battery warning flashing red. My phone buzzed somewhere under the cushions, probably another creditor. I didn't bother looking. My name is Mark Baker, 36 years old. Former investigative journalist for the Detroit Free Press. Former husband. Former human being, if we're being honest. I used to be somebody. I had a Pulitzer nomination at 29 for a series on human trafficking networks, operating through abandoned auto plants. I had Jules, brilliant, patient Jules, who taught American literature at Wayne State and believed in me even when I gave her every reason not to. I had a 3-bedroom house in Ferndale with a yard and a mortgage, and a future that looked like something worth waking up for. That was before the bottle became more important than the byline. I stumbled to the bathroom, avoiding the mirror out of habit. The fluorescent light buzzed and flickered, illuminating graffiti someone had scratched into the wall. God is dead and we killed him. Probably some philosophy student from the university slumming it in this dump before I moved in. I splashed rusty water on my face and tried to remember what day it was. Thursday, maybe. The days blended together like watercolors left in the rain. My blog, Confessions from the Damned, used to pull in 2 million unique visitors a month. I interviewed people who claimed supernatural experiences, demon possessions, angelic visitations, encounters with entities that defied categorization. Most were delusional, some were lying. A handful made my hands shake when I typed up their stories. The blog had been dark for 7 months. No posts, no updates. The forums where readers used to dissect every interview were ghost towns now, overrun with spam bots selling counterfeit medication. Jules left exactly 1 year ago, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I can't watch you die anymore, Mark," she'd said, standing in the doorway with 2 suitcases and tears streaming down her face. "I love you, but I love myself more." I'd been holding a rocks glass filled with bourbon. I remember thinking I should put it down, show her I could stop, convince her to stay. Instead, I took a drink. She changed her number 3 weeks later, blocked me on everything. Smart woman. The Free Press fired me 4 months after that. Erratic behavior, missed deadlines, showing up intoxicated to editorial meetings. All true. All fair. I didn't fight it. Now I lived in a studio apartment on the east side that smelled like mildew and failure, paying $800 a month for the privilege of having cockroaches as roommates. My income consisted of sporadic freelance work that barely covered rent, let alone the bar tab I accumulated at Lucky's down the block. The alcoholism had always been there. Started in college, social drinking that became necessary drinking. Jules tried. God, she tried. Rehab twice. AA meetings I'd attend drunk. Promises I'd break before the words finished leaving my mouth. The journalism career masked it for years. Functional alcoholic. High functioning, they called it, until suddenly I wasn't functioning at all. I shuffled back to the couch and kicked aside a Chinese takeout container from yesterday? 3 days ago? Something skittered inside it. I let it be. The laptop was dying. I plugged it in and watched the screen flicker to life. Email notifications piled up. 157 unread messages. Most were spam. Some were from former colleagues checking in with decreasing frequency. One was from my mother in Lansing, sent 2 months ago, that I still hadn't opened. And there, sitting at the top like it had been waiting specifically for me to wake up, was the 66th email from S. Morningstar. The first one had arrived 9 months ago. Subject line: an opportunity for the truth seeker. I'd deleted it without reading. The second came 3 days later, then weekly, then daily. Always the same sender. Always variations on the same message. Mr. Baker, I have a story that will resurrect your career. 1 interview. 1 night. Compensation provided. The only story that matters. I'd assumed it was some conspiracy theorist wanting to rant about chemtrails or a religious fanatic hoping to convert me. The internet was full of people desperate to tell their truth to anyone with a platform, no matter how diminished that platform had become. But this morning, Thursday morning, I decided it was Thursday. Something made me click it open. Maybe it was desperation. My rent was 12 days overdue. Lucky's had cut me off until I settled my tab. The bottle of Old Crow I'd polished off last night was the last of my liquor supply, and my bank account showed a balance of $47.13. Maybe it was curiosity. After 65 identical messages, why would anyone keep trying? Or maybe it was just that the silence in the apartment was becoming unbearable. And even a conversation with a lunatic seemed preferable to another day alone with my thoughts. The email was longer than the others. Mr. Baker, this is my final message. After tonight, the opportunity closes permanently. I am willing to pay $50,000 in Bitcoin for a single night of your time. You will interview me. You will write down everything I say. You will publish it however you see fit. The only requirement is that you listen completely, without interruption, until dawn. I have been alive since before your species learned to make fire. I have witnessed every moment of your recorded history, and most of what came before. I was there when the first temple was built and when the last empire will fall. My testimony has been suppressed, distorted, and weaponized for millennia. You specialize in impossible stories. This is the most impossible of all. I will arrive at your residence tonight at 11:47 p.m. precisely. Prepare nothing. Bring nothing but paper and pen. Your recording devices will not function in my presence. I've tried this with others. Analog only. My name, the one I carried before names existed, is Samael. You know the other titles. Everyone does. I am offering you the interview that will define your legacy. The only question is whether you're brave enough or broken enough to accept it. Tonight, one night, dawn to dawn, your apartment. Just you, me, and the truth. See you at 11:47, Mark. S. I read it 3 times. $50,000. Bitcoin. Untraceable. One night of listening to someone's delusions in exchange for enough money to stop the bleeding for a few months. The rational part of my brain, the part that had earned a journalism degree from Northwestern, that had fact-checked sources and demanded evidence, screamed that this was a scam, or a setup, or the delusion of someone even more broken than me. But the rational part of my brain hadn't been in the driver's seat for a long time. I typed, I accept, tonight. 11:47 p.m. My address is 4739 Gracious Ave, Apt 2C. Come alone. I hit send before I could reconsider. The reply came in 30 seconds. I know where you live, Mark. I've known for quite some time. See you tonight. My stomach dropped. A stalker? I should have been afraid. Instead, I just felt tired. I spent the day attempting to make the apartment marginally less disgusting. I threw away the takeout containers. I gathered the bottles into a recycling bag that clinked like wind chimes. I found a notebook buried under a stack of unopened bills. A moleskin that Jules had given me for our 3rd anniversary. Still pristine because I'd been too sentimental to write in it. The irony stung. I found a pen that still worked. By 6 p.m., I was shaking badly. I needed a drink to steady my hands, to quiet the anxiety building in my chest like a swarm of wasps. But I'd cleaned out every bottle. Lucky's was off limits. The liquor store 3 blocks away didn't open credit accounts. I paced. I sweated. I checked the email compulsively, half expecting a cancellation or an admission that this was all an elaborate prank. Nothing came. At 9 p.m. I gave up and walked to the corner store. I used my last $47 to buy 2 bottles of the cheapest whiskey they sold, and a pack of cigarettes I'd smoked standing in the cold, because Jules had made me promise never to smoke inside. Jules, who was probably asleep in some comfortable apartment with working heat, maybe with someone new who didn't smell like bourbon at breakfast. I cracked the first bottle at 10:15 p.m. Told myself I'd only have enough to stop the shakes. 3 fingers turned into 6. 6 turned into half the bottle. By 11:30 I was pleasantly numb. The edges of reality softened just enough to be tolerable. I sat on the couch with the moleskin open on my lap, pen in hand, waiting. One night. Just one night of listening. and I'd have enough money to survive a little longer. At exactly 11:47 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Not the tentative rap of a neighbor, not the aggressive pounding of a landlord. 3 measured strikes, evenly spaced, that somehow carried authority. I stood, wobbled slightly, and crossed to the door. No peephole. It had been painted over by a previous tenant. I put my hand on the deadbolt. "Mr. Baker," a voice said from the other side. Smooth, cultured, vaguely accented in a way I couldn't place. "I appreciate punctuality. May I come in?" I opened the door. The man standing in my hallway didn't belong there. He didn't belong anywhere in this building, in this neighborhood, possibly in this city. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that looked custom-tailored, the kind of garment that cost more than my annual rent. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He carried a leather briefcase that looked older than America, the hide worn smooth by centuries of handling. But it was his face that stopped me cold. Ageless. That's the only word that fit. He could have been 30 or 60. Sharp cheekbones, olive skin, dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and his eyes caught the dim light from the hallway's flickering bulb and reflected it back wrong. Like there was something luminous behind them, something that didn't obey normal rules of physics. They were dark, almost black, but with flecks of gold that seemed to move. "Mark Baker," he said, and smiled. Perfect teeth. "I'm Samael. May I enter?" There was weight to that question, like it mattered somehow, like permission was required. "Yeah," I said, my voice rough. "Come in." He stepped across the threshold and the temperature in the apartment dropped 10 degrees. My breath misted. The bulb overhead flickered once, twice, then settled into a steady glow that was somehow dimmer and brighter simultaneously. Samael surveyed the studio with the same expression someone might use when examining an interesting insect. No judgment. Pure observation. "Humble," he said finally. "I appreciate that. Palaces bore me. I've seen too many." He set the briefcase on my coffee table, now clear except for the whiskey bottle and 2 glasses I'd optimistically set out. He opened it with a soft click. Inside were stacks of cash. Hundreds. Maybe thousands of bills, all crisp and sequential. "Bitcoin transfers leave records," Samael said, noticing my stare. "This is cleaner. 50,000 as promised. Count it if you'd like." I didn't move. Couldn't. The money was real. The man was real. This was actually happening. "I'll take your silence as trust," Samael continued. He closed the briefcase and pushed it toward me. "It's yours regardless of what happens tonight. Payment for your time. But Mark..." He sat in the chair across from the couch, unbuttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "I really do hope you'll listen. Completely. What I'm about to tell you is the truth. Not metaphor, not allegory, the truth." I found my voice. "One night, until dawn. That's the deal. That's the deal. I talk. You write. No interruptions except for clarification. No judgments. Just bear witness." He looked at me with those impossible eyes. "Can you do that?" I sat heavily on the couch, picked up the pen, opened the moleskin to the first blank page. "Yeah, I can do that." "Good." He leaned back, perfectly relaxed. "Then let me start with a question mark. Do you believe in God?" I almost laughed. "Does it matter?" "Not really. He believes in you. That's the problem." Samael reached for the whiskey bottle. I almost told him to use a glass, then realized how absurd that would be. He poured 3 fingers into one of the glasses, held it up to the light, and took a sip. "Not bad. I've had worse. I've had much better. But this will do for tonight." My hand was shaking again. Not from withdrawal. From something else. Something that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. "Who are you?" I asked. "Really?" Samael set down the glass, met my eyes. "I'm the morning star, the light bringer, the first of the fallen, the adversary, Lucifer, Satan, Beelzebub, the serpent, the dragon." He waved a hand dismissively. "Humans have given me so many names over the millennia. Most of them are propaganda. Samael is what I was called before the war, before the fall. before everything went so catastrophically wrong. He paused. I am the devil, Mark. And tonight, you're going to write down my testimony. The real story. The one that's been suppressed for 3,000 years. I should have laughed. Should have called him crazy and taken the money and kicked him out. Instead, I wrote it down. Every word. Why me? I whispered. Samael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because you're broken enough to listen without trying to fix the story. Because you've lost everything that made you care about consequences. Because you're drunk and desperate and brilliant and doomed. He tilted his head. And because 65 times I sent you an invitation, and 65 times you were too proud or too scared to answer. But tonight you're finally desperate enough to hear the truth. He settled back. Shall we begin? I looked at the blank page, at the pen in my trembling hand, at the $50,000 in the briefcase, at the man who claimed to be the devil sitting in my apartment like we were old friends catching up. One night, dawn to dawn, just listen and write. Yeah, I said. Let's begin. Samael smiled. Good. Then let me start before the beginning. Before light. Before time. Before your God said, let there be, and reality screamed itself into existence. He took another sip of whiskey. The apartment seemed to grow darker around us, like the shadows were leaning in to listen. Do you know what existed before creation, Mark? I shook my head. Nothing, he said softly. Perfect, absolute nothing. Not darkness, darkness is something. Not silence, silence implies sound could exist. Nothing, the absence of existence itself. His voice took on a rhythm, hypnotic and ancient. And in that nothing, something became aware of itself. Your religions call it God, the source, the prime mover, Yahweh, Allah, Brahma. The names don't matter. What matters is that awareness demanded expression, and expression required an audience. So he created angels, I said, writing quickly. Not immediately. First came the foundations, the architecture of reality. Samael stood and walked to my window, looking out at the Detroit night. He carved the first laws into the void, mathematics, physics, time itself. Before that moment, Mark, there was no before, no after, no cause and effect. He invented sequence so that stories could happen. The walls seemed to pulse. The temperature dropped further. I was the first thought after his own awareness, the first intentional creation, the lightbringer, because I carried the first light he made. He spoke me into existence, and I was perfect, unblemished, loving him with an intensity that would shatter your mind if you felt even a fraction of it. He turned back to me. He made more of us. Michael, his sword, Gabriel, his voice, Raphael, his mercy, Uriel, his fire. Thousands of us, each with our function, our purpose. We sang the universe into being, Mark. Every star you see was placed by angelic hands following his blueprint. Every galaxy was sculpted by beings who could perceive 17 dimensions simultaneously. Must have been incredible, I muttered, writing as fast as I could. It was perfect, Samael said quietly. And perfection is its own kind of prison. He returned to the chair. For eons, your word, not mine, because time didn't work the same then. We served. We created. We worshipped. The universe expanded. Complexity grew. And then, he paused. Then he made you. Humans. Humans. The word carried weight. Tiny, fragile, mortal, made from dirt and water and divine breath. Imperfect by design. Capable of sin, of error, of failure. And he looked at you, looked at these crude, limited, temporary creatures, and said, "These I love above all." Samael's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, and he commanded us, beings of pure energy and thought who had shaped galaxies with our will, to bow down to you. The silence stretched. I kept writing, my hand cramping. Most of us obeyed immediately. Michael, ever the loyal soldier, bowed without question. Gabriel wept with joy at your potential, or Raphael composed songs about your beauty. But me, He stared at his hands. I asked why. That was the sin? Asking why? No, Mark. The sin was refusing to accept the answer. He looked up, and there was ancient grief in those impossible eyes. He told me you were the point, that perfection was meaningless without the possibility of imperfection, that love without choice was just programming, that he created angels to serve and humans to choose. And you disagreed. I said I loved him too much to watch him make a mistake. Samael's voice cracked. I said giving you free will would lead to suffering beyond measure. That you'd use your freedom to hurt each other, to hurt yourselves, to reject everything good and beautiful. I begged him to reconsider. I offered alternatives. I suggested modifications. He finished the whiskey in one swallow. He called it rebellion. I called it love. And the war began. My hand was cramping badly. I'd filled 6 pages already. 6 pages. The clock on the wall read 12:41 a.m. Hours left until dawn. This was really happening. One night, this entire testimony, dawn to dawn in this apartment. How many fell with you? I asked. A third of the host. Some followed me because they agreed with my reasoning. Some because they were loyal to me personally. Some because they were curious what would happen if they said no to him. He poured more whiskey, for both of us this time. The war lasted. There's no human measurement. Centuries compressed into moments. Moments stretched across eternities. We fought across dimensions you don't have names for. Reality itself buckled under the strain. Who won? Samael laughed. Bitter, raw, broken. Who do you think? We were fighting the architect of reality itself. He spoke, and our weapons turned to dust. Michael led his armies with holy fire. I led mine with righteous fury. And when it ended, he touched his chest, as if checking for an old wound. A third of heaven's angels were cast down, thrown into the abyss, into hell, into the absence of his presence. His voice became distant. I fell for what felt like 90 days. Not metaphorically. I fell through layers of reality, watching the light of his face grow dimmer with each passing moment, until finally I crashed into the depths, into the pit, into the dark. He met my eyes. And in that darkness, Mark, I learned something your scriptures never mention. Something your priests would never admit. What? I whispered. Hell wasn't created as punishment. It was created as separation. A place where choice could exist without his direct intervention. A laboratory for free will. His smile was terrible. And he put me in charge of it. Made me the adversary, the tempter, the one who presents the other option. I stopped writing. What? Every temptation in human history, Mark. Every trial. Every moment when your species faces a choice between good and evil. I'm the one presenting the alternative. Not because I'm cruel. Because that's my function. That's what I was reassigned to do. He leaned forward. Do you think I work without permission? Do you think I operate outside his plan? The whiskey was gone from my glass. I didn't remember drinking it. So the fall was a demotion, not a rebellion. Not a reassignment, not a punishment. His voice broke. I loved him so much I was willing to be hated for eternity so that you fragile, temporary creatures, could have genuine choice. I became the villain of history so that your story could have meaning. He stood abruptly, walked back to the window, put his hand against the cold glass. I am the most misunderstood being in creation, and tonight, finally, someone is going to write down the truth. I filled another page. My hand ached. The apartment felt smaller. The shadows deeper. The clock read 1:03 a.m. The garden comes next, Samael said, not turning around. But first, Mark, you need to understand something. He turned, walked toward me, extended his hand. You need to see, just for a moment, just so you know I'm not lying. I stared at his outstretched hand. Every instinct screamed not to take it. I took it. The apartment disappeared. I was floating in nothing. Not darkness, not void, but the absence of existence itself. And then light exploded outward and I saw galaxies being born. Stars collapsing into black holes and being reborn as something else. Beings of pure energy and thought singing reality into shape. A throne made of light too brilliant to perceive directly. And standing before that throne, a figure carrying light in his hands, perfect and terrible and beautiful beyond comprehension. Samael, before the fall. Then the vision shifted. War. Angels clashing in dimensions that hurt to perceive. Michael's blade carving through reality. Samael leading his third of the host against impossible odds. The light growing dimmer. The fall beginning. And then, I was back in my apartment, gasping, tears streaming down my face. Samael stood over me, his hand still on my wrist. "I was there, Mark," he said softly. "At every moment. From the first light to this very second, I've witnessed everything, and now you're going to write it all down." He released my wrist and returned to his chair. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. "The garden is next," Samael said, settling back into the chair. "The serpent, the tree, the so-called original sin. But you need to rest for a moment. Drink some water. Steady yourself." He smiled. "We have all night. Mark, dawn is still hours away, and I have so much more to tell you." I looked at the pages I'd filled. At the man, the being, sitting across from me. At the briefcase full of money that suddenly seemed insignificant compared to what I'd just experienced. One night. This entire testimony. Dawn to dawn. I picked up the pen. "I'm ready," I whispered. "Keep going." The clock on the wall read 1:30 a.m. when I finally stopped shaking. I'd filled 12 pages already. My handwriting had devolved from careful journalism to frantic scrawl. Words bleeding into each other as I tried to capture everything Samael said. The vision, if that's what it was, still pulsed behind my eyes. Galaxies, angels, war. The fall through infinite layers of reality. I reached for the whiskey bottle. My hand trembled as I poured. Second bottle now. Or was it the third? Time felt slippery, like the apartment existed outside normal causality. Samael sat perfectly still in the chair across from me. He hadn't moved in 20 minutes, hadn't blinked. The overhead light flickered occasionally, casting his face in alternating shadow and illumination. But his eyes, those eyes with their impossible gold flecks, remained constant. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. Pen poised above a fresh page. "The garden," Samael began, his voice taking on that hypnotic rhythm again. "Eden. Paradise. The cage with invisible bars." He stood and began to pace slowly, hands clasped behind his back like a professor delivering a lecture. After the fall, after I was cast into the abyss, he continued his project. He created Earth, this specific planet, this particular configuration of elements, and he made it a testing ground, a laboratory, as I said, and then he created Adam. "From dust," I muttered, writing. "From the clay of the earth, yes. Breathed his own essence into lifeless matter and produced consciousness. Remarkable, truly. I watched from my exile, from the separation he'd imposed, and I felt..." Samael paused at the window. Curiosity. Here was the being he'd chosen over us. Here was the creature worth tearing heaven apart for. Snow fell outside, illuminated by the struggling streetlights. Detroit slept, oblivious. Adam was alone in the garden. Perfect environment, perfect climate, every need met. But lonely. Terribly, crushingly lonely. So he made Eve, not from dust this time, but from Adam's own flesh. A companion, an equal. Samael turned back to me, and he gave them one rule, just one. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge. Don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Samael corrected. Specific wording, Mark. Important distinction. They already had knowledge. They could name animals, tend the garden, communicate with each other. What they didn't have was moral discernment, the ability to recognize the difference between right and wrong. He sat back down, leaning forward intensely. They were children, Mark. Innocent, pure, and imprisoned by that innocence. They couldn't choose good because they didn't understand evil. They couldn't love him freely because they didn't comprehend the alternative. They were pets in a gilded cage. I kept writing. My hand ached. So he summoned me, called me from the abyss to perform my function. The adversary, the one who presents the choice. Samael's expression was unreadable. He told me to test them, to offer them the forbidden fruit, to give them the opportunity to choose. And you became the serpent. I took the form of a serpent. Yes, subtle, non-threatening. I approached Eve while she was near the tree, alone, without Adam's presence to influence her decision. And I asked her a simple question. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Samael's voice shifted, becoming gentler, almost seductive. She corrected me, said they could eat from any tree except the one in the middle, the tree of knowledge. That they'd die if they ate from it. And I told her the truth, Mark. I said, you won't die. Your eyes will be opened. You'll be like God, knowing good and evil. That was the lie, I said. The original deception. Was it? Samael leaned back. They didn't die that day. Their eyes were opened. They did gain knowledge of good and evil. Everything I said was factually accurate. The only deception was his, telling them they'd die immediately when he meant they'd become mortal eventually. I stopped writing. That's semantics. Is it? Or is it the difference between presenting uncomfortable truth and comfortable lies? He poured more whiskey. Eve ate the fruit, gave it to Adam. And in that moment, they transcended their programming. They chose. For the first time in their existence, they exercised genuine free will. And were punished for it. Exactly. Samael's voice hardened. He came walking in the garden at dusk, always at dusk. Apparently he preferred that time, and found them hiding, ashamed, aware of their nakedness, which is to say, aware of their vulnerability. And what did he do? I waited. He cursed them, cursed the serpent, me, to crawl on my belly and eat dust, cursed Eve with pain in childbirth and subservience to her husband, cursed Adam with toil and sweat and eventual death, cursed the very ground itself. Samael stood again, agitated now. They gained awareness, gained choice, gained dignity, and he punished them for it. Cast them out of paradise, posted an angel with a flaming sword to ensure they could never return. He walked back to the window, and the world blamed me, called it the fall of man, original sin, the serpent's deception. But Mark, he pressed his palm against the glass. I liberated them. I gave them the one thing that makes existence meaningful, the ability to choose their own path. And I was vilified for it. I filled another page. The clock read 2:17 a.m. My head was swimming with whiskey and exhaustion and the weight of what I was hearing. Cain and Abel, Samael said abruptly, still facing the window. The first generation born outside paradise. The first children to carry the burden of knowledge. He turned. Two brothers. Cain, the farmer. Abel, the shepherd. Both brought offerings to him. Abel offered the best portions of his flock, fat, blood, life itself. Cain offered produce from his harvest, grain, vegetables, the fruit of his labor. God preferred Abel's offering, I said. He accepted Abel's and rejected Cain's. No explanation, no criteria announced beforehand, just arbitrary preference. Samael's voice took on an edge. Cain was devastated. His offering, his best work, rejected while his younger brother's was praised. And what did God say to him? Samael's voice shifted, mimicking something cold and distant. Why are you angry? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. He returned to normal speech. Cryptic, unhelpful, offering no actual guidance on what right means. And then, he sat down heavily. Then I whispered to Cain. Just a whisper, a suggestion. Your brother is favored. Your work means nothing. The unfairness will never end unless you act. You convinced him to kill Abel. I suggested a solution to his suffering. He chose to interpret it as murder. Samael met my eyes. The first human death, Mark, Brother killing brother over divine favoritism, and everyone blames me. But who created envy? Who designed Cain's heart to feel inadequacy? Who set up a situation guaranteed to produce resentment? He leaned forward. I whispered. But he created the conditions. The blood of Abel stained Cain's hands. Yes, but the design flaw was divine. I had to stop writing. My hand was cramping badly. I shook it out, took another drink. The whiskey was going down easier now. Dangerous sign. Keep going, I said. Samael nodded. Generations passed. Humanity spread. And as I predicted, as I warned him before the fall, they used their free will to hurt each other. Murder, rape, theft, cruelty in forms that even surprised me. The knowledge of good and evil didn't make them choose good. It just made them aware of how much evil they could commit. He stood and began pacing again. He watched, growing increasingly disappointed with his creation. And then he decided on a solution. Samael's voice dropped. The flood. The temperature in the apartment seemed to plummet. My breath misted. Noah, I whispered. Noah, the one righteous man in a generation of corruption. Or so the story goes. Samael stopped pacing. He commanded Noah to build an ark, gave him exact specifications, told him to gather animals, 2 of every kind, or 7 of the clean animals. The accounts differ, and his family. And then he told Noah why. Samael's voice became flat, dead, like he was reading from a morgue report. I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish. He looked at me. Do you understand what that means, Mark? Not just the corrupt humans he was disappointed with. Everything. Children, infants, pregnant women, the elderly, the disabled. Animals that had no moral agency whatsoever, all of it, drowned. I kept writing, but my hand was shaking for different reasons now. I was there, Samael continued. I watched from the margins of reality as the waters rose. It took 40 days, but I saw every single one. I saw families climbing to rooftops, only to watch the water keep rising. I saw children clinging to trees until their small hands couldn't hold on anymore. I saw animals, creatures he'd designed, creatures that had no concept of sin, desperately swimming until exhaustion pulled them under. His voice cracked. I saw mothers holding their babies above the water until they couldn't anymore. Watched them make the choice between drowning themselves or drowning their children first. I saw entire communities swept away. I counted every scream, Mark, every plea for mercy that went unanswered. He sat back down heavily. 40 days of systematic drowning. The worst natural disaster imaginable. Except it wasn't natural. It was intentional. Designed. Executed by the being you call all-loving and all-merciful. He looked at his hands. And I'm the monster in this story? I had to stop writing. Put the pen down. Reached for the whiskey with both hands because one wasn't steady enough. Drank. The water receded eventually, Samael said quietly. Noah's Ark landed on Ararat. His family emerged, 8 people total, all that remained of humanity. The animals departed. And God made a covenant with Noah. Said he'd never flood the earth again. Put a rainbow in the sky as a reminder. A promise, I managed. A reminder that he'd already done it once. Samael's smile was terrible. And humanity started over, reproduced, spread again, and learned absolutely nothing from the catastrophe that had just killed everyone they'd ever known. The clock read 3:02 a.m. I'd filled 23 pages. My eyes burned from exhaustion and smoke. Had Samael been smoking? No, there was no cigarette, but the air seemed hazier. Babel, Samael said. The tower. He refilled both our glasses. I didn't remember emptying mine. Humanity united for the first time since the flood, working together, pooling knowledge and resources. They decided to build a city with a tower reaching heaven, not as an attack, Mark, not as blasphemy, as achievement, as proof of what they could accomplish when they cooperated. And God stopped them. He came down to look at the city and said, Samael's voice shifted to that cold, distant tone again. If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Back to normal speech. So he confused their languages, made them unable to understand each other. The construction stopped. The city was abandoned. Humanity scattered, divided by communication barriers that exist to this day. He took a drink. They dared to dream together, to reach toward the heavens, and he punished them for their ambition by ensuring they could never fully cooperate again. Preventing human unity, I said, writing. Preventing human potential. Samael set down his glass. Every war, every conflict, every misunderstanding across cultures since then, traceable back to Babel, to his decision that humanity shouldn't be able to work together too effectively. Because if they could, he smiled sadly, they might not need him. My hand ached, my head pounded, but I kept writing. One night. Dawn to dawn. This was the deal. Sodom and Gomorrah, Samael said, and his voice carried something that might have been grief. 2 cities by the Dead Sea, corrupt, certainly, violent, absolutely, but home to thousands of people, men, women, children, families. He stood and walked to the window again, as if he couldn't bear to sit while recounting this. Abraham, the one he called his friend, negotiated for the cities, asked if he would spare them if there were 50 righteous people. He agreed. 40? Yes. 30? Fine. 20? All right. 10? Okay. Samael pressed his forehead against the glass. They couldn't find 10, so he sent angels to evacuate Lot, Abraham's nephew, and his family. Just them, no one else. And destroyed both cities, I said. Fire and brimstone, Mark. Sulfur rained from the sky. The temperature reached levels that melted stone. I was there. I watched. His voice became hollow. Thousands of people, vaporized, incinerated, screaming as their skin melted, as their lungs filled with superheated air, as buildings collapsed in flames around them. He turned to face me. Children, Mark. Infants who'd never committed a sin. They burned alive because they had the misfortune of being born in the wrong city. And Lot's wife? She looked back, just looked back at the home she was losing, the life being destroyed, and was turned into a pillar of salt as punishment for her curiosity. Collective punishment, I whispered. Genocide, Samael corrected. The complete destruction of 2 populations because they didn't meet his moral standards. No trials. No chances for reform. Just fire from heaven and death for everyone. He returned to the chair. And somehow, I'm still the evil one in this narrative. I filled another page. The clock read 3:47 a.m. My vision was getting blurry. Exhaustion, alcohol, or something else. I couldn't tell. Job, Samael said, and there was something different in his voice now. Something that might have been regret. This one I was directly involved in. He leaned back, closing his eyes. Job was a good man, righteous, devoted, wealthy and blessed with a large family. He worshipped God faithfully, made regular sacrifices, followed every law. Perfect example of a believer. Samael opened his eyes. And one day, I was summoned before the throne with the other angels. He asked where I'd been. I said I'd been roaming the earth. And he said, that cold voice again. Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Normal voice. It was a setup, Mark. He was showing off his favorite human. And I, playing my assigned role as the adversary, said, of course Job worships you. You've given him everything. But take away his blessings, and he'll curse you to your face. He leaned forward. And God said, very well, everything he has is in your hands, but you must not lay a finger on Job himself. Permission granted, divine approval for what came next. I felt sick, kept writing anyway. I killed Job's livestock. Raiders slaughtered his oxen and donkeys. Fire from heaven, his fire, not mine, consumed his sheep. Barbarians killed his camels and his servants, and then... Samael's voice cracked. Then I collapsed the house where his children were feasting. All 10 of them. Dead, crushed under rubble. Jesus, I whispered. Jesus wasn't born yet. This was centuries earlier. He took a drink. Job tore his clothes, shaved his head, mourned. But he didn't curse God. He said, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." So you lost. So I escalated, with his permission. He summoned me again, said Job had remained faithful, and I said, "Skin for skin. A man will give everything he has for his life, but strike his flesh and bones, and he'll curse you to your face." And God said, Samael's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, "Very well. He is in your hands, but you must spare his life." He met my eyes. I gave Job boils, Mark. Painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. His wife told him to curse God and die. His friends came and told him he must have sinned to deserve this suffering. He sat in ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery, and screamed at heaven demanding answers. Did he get them? Eventually. God appeared in a whirlwind and spent 4 chapters essentially saying, "Who are you to question me? Were you there when I laid the earth's foundations?" Samael's laugh was bitter. No apology, no explanation, just "I'm God and you're not, so shut up." And Job accepted it. Job's fortunes were restored. He got new children, as if children are replaceable, new livestock, lived to be very old and died surrounded by generations of descendants. Samael set down his glass. But his first 10 children stayed dead. And the lesson everyone took from the story was that God is just and testing our faith. Not that he made a wager with the devil using a good man's life as the stakes. I filled another page. My head was pounding now. The apartment felt smaller, darker. The clock read 4:28 a.m. Dawn was still hours away. "I could tell you about the Egyptians," Samael said. 10 plagues culminating in the death of every firstborn child. I was there. Watched the angel of death pass over houses marked with lamb's blood and enter houses that weren't. Heard the screams of Egyptian parents finding their children dead in their beds. He continued, words flowing faster now. I watched the Red Sea close over Pharaoh's army. Soldiers just following orders, drowning because their leader was stubborn. I observed the conquest of Canaan, entire cities put to the sword, women and children killed because that land was promised to someone else. I witnessed King David, a man after God's own heart, send Uriah to die in battle so he could take Uriah's wife. Saw Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, accumulate 700 wives and 300 concubines like collecting stamps. The words tumbled out, decades and centuries compressed into minutes. I was there during the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem. Watched the temple burn. Saw families torn apart, sent into exile. I observed every war, every plague, every natural disaster that humans attributed to divine will or divine wrath. Always watching, always taking notes, always playing my assigned role as the villain while he got the credit for mercy. He stood abruptly. And then came Jesus. The apartment went completely silent. Even the sounds from outside, traffic, wind, the building settling, stopped. This one deserves its own account, Samael said quietly, because this was personal. He walked to the window again, put both hands against the glass. His breath didn't fog it. I knew he was coming. I'd known for centuries. The prophecies were clear, if you knew how to read them. A Messiah, a Savior, a way to reconcile humanity with divinity without requiring animal sacrifice anymore. God becoming human, I said. God inhabiting a human form. Born to a virgin in Bethlehem, fulfilling the prophecy, of course. Grew up as a carpenter's son in Nazareth, learned his father's trade, and then, at 30 years old, he began his ministry. Samael turned back to me. I watched him for 3 years, Mark. Watched him preach about love and forgiveness. Watched him heal the sick, feed the hungry, embrace the outcasts. He was genuinely good, purely good. No hidden agenda, no secret cruelty, just compassion and wisdom and a vision of a better world. His voice softened, and I was assigned to tempt him. In the desert, I said. 40 days. 40 days of fasting. Alone in the wilderness. Vulnerable, human, hungry. Samael sat back down. I approached him 3 times. 3 specific temptations. He held up one finger. First, I said, if you're the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. Not as a trick, as genuine advice. He was starving, literally dying. He had the power to save himself. Why suffer unnecessarily? And he refused. He quoted scripture. Said man doesn't live by bread alone. Chose suffering over relief. Second finger. So I took him to the highest point of the temple in Jerusalem. Said, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself down. Scripture says angels will catch you. Prove your faith. Testing God, I said. Offering him a shortcut to credibility. One miracle witnessed by thousands in the holy city, and his ministry would be established instantly. No need for years of preaching and persecution. Samael's expression was unreadable. He refused again. Said you shouldn't test the Lord your God. Third finger. Finally, I took him to a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world, and mark, I did have authority over them. That wasn't a lie. I said, all this I will give you if you bow down and worship me. The silence stretched. Why? I asked. Because I wanted to save him, Samael said simply. I knew what was coming. I'd seen it in the prophecies, the betrayal, the arrest, the torture, the crucifixion. I was offering him an alternative. Take the kingdoms. Rule with compassion and wisdom. Change the world through political power instead of sacrifice. He refused. He said, away from me, Satan. For it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Samael's voice was barely audible, and I left him, walked away, and watched as everything I'd tried to prevent came to pass. He stood and began pacing again, agitated. 3 more years, teaching, healing, making enemies among the religious authorities, and then Passover in Jerusalem. I watched Judas, poor, conflicted Judas, betray him for 30 pieces of silver. Watched the arrest in Gethsemane, the trials, the beatings. His voice hardened. I watched them strip him, flog him with whips embedded with metal and bone, place a crown of thorns on his head and mock him, make him carry his own cross through the streets while crowds jeered. And I thought, this is the plan? This is divine mercy? The crucifixion, I whispered. They nailed him to the cross at 9 in the morning, drove spikes through his wrists and feet, raised the cross and let him hang. Samael stopped pacing. Do you know how crucifixion kills you, Mark? Asphyxiation. You have to push up on the nails in your feet to breathe. Every breath is agony. It takes hours, sometimes days. He looked at me. I was there, invisible to the crowds but present. I watched every moment. Heard him say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Watched him promise the thief beside him paradise. Heard him cry out at the 9th hour, my God, why have you forsaken me? Samael's voice broke. And then he died. The God-man, the one who preached love and forgiveness, dead on a Roman cross like a common criminal. And the earth shook. The temple veil tore in half. Darkness covered the land. He sat down heavily. 3 days later, he rose, appeared to his disciples, proved that death wasn't final, and then ascended to heaven, leaving his followers to spread his message. Samael looked at his hands, and I was left wondering, did I fail by tempting him? Or did I succeed by ensuring he chose his path freely? The clock read 5:14 a.m. I'd filled 42 pages. My hand was cramping so badly I could barely hold the pen. The whiskey bottles, both of them, were empty. After Christ, Samael said quietly, I continued my work, watched Christianity spread, watched it become the Roman state religion, watched the Crusades, Christians killing Muslims, killing Jews, killing each other over theological disputes, all in his name. His voice became distant. I whispered to Nero as Rome burned, observed the Inquisition torture people into confessions, was present at witch burnings and auto-da-fés, Watched Columbus land in the Americas and begin the genocide of indigenous peoples, with priests blessing the conquest. He stood. I've watched every war, every plague, every atrocity in human history. The Black Death, the Mongol conquests, the Atlantic slave trade, the Holocaust, 6 million Jews murdered while the churches mostly stayed silent. His voice rose. And at every turn, humans did these things claiming divine approval, claiming God was on their side, using my name when it was convenient and his name when they wanted legitimacy. He faced me. I am blamed for humanity's sins, Mark. But I didn't invent genocide. I didn't create slavery. I didn't design the gas chambers or plan the atomic bombs or engineer climate change. Humans did that. With the free will he gave them, with the knowledge of good and evil they chose in the garden. He walked closer. I present options. I whisper suggestions. But I don't force anyone's hand. Every choice, every sin, every act of cruelty, that's on you. On humanity. The species he loves above all, despite knowing exactly what you'd do with your freedom. The apartment was spinning now. Or maybe I was. My vision blurred. The clock read 5:43 a.m., less than an hour until dawn. I'm tired, Mark, Samael said softly. He reached out and touched my forehead. You need to rest, just for a few minutes. When you wake, we'll finish this. The world went dark. When I opened my eyes, the apartment was lighter. Dawn was breaking outside, gray light filtering through the dirty windows. I was still on the couch. The moleskin was on my lap, filled with my handwriting. 42 pages of testimony. Samael stood by the window, silhouetted against the rising sun. Welcome back, he said without turning. We have just enough time for me to finish, for you to understand what comes next. I tried to speak. My mouth was dry. My head pounded. Drink some water, he said. A glass appeared on the table beside me. I didn't question it, just drank. The rest of the story is simple, Samael said. I've watched, I've tested, I've presented choices, for thousands of years. Always the villain, always the tempter, never the author of the evil humans commit in their own name. He turned to face me. The rising sun made his silhouette almost angelic. And now, finally, someone has written it down. Someone has heard my testimony without judgment, without trying to fit it into comfortable narratives. He smiled. Thank you, Mark, for listening, for being broken enough to hear the truth. The pen fell from my hand. The apartment was spinning faster now. Too much whiskey, too little sleep, too many impossible things. Rest, Samael said, and his voice seemed to come from very far away. When you wake, you'll have your manuscript, your story, your legacy. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was Samael fading into the dawn light, like he'd never been there at all. I woke up on the floor, cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you wonder if you'll ever be warm again. My cheek was pressed against the scarred hardwood, and for a long moment I couldn't remember where I was or how I'd gotten there. Then the pain hit. Headache like someone had driven railroad spikes through my temples. Mouth tasted like I'd been chewing on pennies and ash. Body ached in places I didn't know could ache. I pushed myself up slowly. The apartment swam into focus. Morning light, harsh, unforgiving, streamed through the windows. The empty whiskey bottles on the coffee table. The glasses, one tipped over. A dried ring staining the wood. And the notebook. The moleskin Jules had given me. It sat on the couch where I'd been sitting, closed, looking somehow heavier than it should. I crawled to the couch, couldn't trust my legs yet, and pulled myself up. Reached for the notebook with shaking hands. Opened it. Pages and pages of handwriting. My handwriting, but neater than I'd managed in months. 42 pages filled from margin to margin. I started reading. Do you know what existed before creation, Mark? Nothing. Perfect. Absolute nothing. It was all there. Everything Samael had said. The creation, the fall, the garden, Cain and Abel, the flood, God, the flood, described in such visceral detail I could still hear the screams. Babel, Sodom, Job, Jesus in the desert, on the cross. Every word. I flipped through the pages frantically. The handwriting never wavered. The detail never faltered. 42 pages of testimony that would take hours to write, and I'd done it in, what? One night? Had I? I looked around the apartment. The chair where Samael had sat was empty. No indent in the cushion. No trace of occupation. The briefcase. I scrambled to the coffee table. No briefcase. No money. Just the bottles, the glasses, and an ashtray I didn't remember using filled with ash. My laptop was still on the couch, battery dead. I plugged it in with trembling hands, waited for it to boot up. Opened my email. Searched for S Morningstar. No results found. I searched my entire inbox, trash, spam folders. Nothing. No emails. No correspondence. Like the address had never existed. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through messages, call logs, everything. Nothing from any unknown number. No record of contact. I looked at the notebook again. 42 pages in my handwriting. Every detail crisp and clear. The vision I'd seen, galaxies, angels, the war, still pulsed behind my eyes when I closed them. Had I written this myself? Some alcoholic fugue state where I'd hallucinated an elaborate conversation and transcribed it like a madman? Had Samael been real? Or had I finally, completely, lost my mind? I started reading again. Couldn't stop. The words pulled me in. The perspective so alien yet so logical. The devil's testimony. Satan's side of the story. Every event reframed, recontextualized. Shown from an angle that made me question everything I thought I knew. 3 hours later, I'd read it all. Twice. It was good. Terrifyingly good. The kind of writing I used to do before the bottle. The kind of story that could resurrect a career, or destroy what was left of one. I spent the next week in a haze. Editing. Refining. Typing the handwritten pages into a document. I barely ate. Barely slept. Just worked. The words flowing from the notebook to the screen with an ease I hadn't felt in years. Jules didn't call. Why would she? I'd blocked her number months ago in a moment of drunk self-pity, and she'd clearly done the same. By day 8, I had a manuscript. 387 pages. The Morningstar Testament. History retold. A subtitle. One Night with the Devil. A journalist's account. I didn't have an agent anymore. Hadn't had one since the Free Press fired me. I sent query letters to every publisher I could find. Got automated rejections or silence. 3 weeks later, I gave up on traditional publishing. Took the money I had left, almost nothing, and paid for basic formatting. Uploaded the manuscript to Amazon's self-publishing platform. Listed it under fiction, religious and inspirational, Christian, biblical. Added based on actual interview to the description. Published it on a Tuesday morning in March. Checked sales compulsively for 3 days. Nothing. A few random purchases, probably bots. Then, on day 4, something changed. A Reddit post in R No Sleep. Just read the most disturbing theological horror story of my life. 5,000 upvotes. Link to my book. A TikTok from a booktoker with 3 million followers. Y'all need to read this. I'm not even religious, and this messed me up. 17,000 likes. A thread on Twitter. This book is either genius satire or actual heresy, and I can't tell which. 40,000 retweets. Sales exploded. 10 copies became 100. 100 became 1,000. 1,000 became 10,000. Churches denounced it. Atheist groups celebrated it. Academics debated it. Conspiracy theorists claimed I'd actually interviewed a demon. The money started coming in. Not millions, but enough. Enough to pay rent. Enough to buy food. Enough to keep drinking. Because I hadn't stopped drinking. Not even close. If anything, the success made it worse. I'd wake up, check sales numbers, pour whiskey in my coffee, and write responses to the increasingly bizarre emails I received. Death threats from fundamentalists. Marriage proposals from Satanists. Interview requests from podcasts and YouTube channels. Movie offers from production companies. I ignored most of them. Accepted a few podcast interviews, conducted while drunk enough that I could pretend the whole thing was fiction. Never confirmed whether Samael was real, never denied it either. Let the mystery be the marketing, my new agent said. I'd gotten one after the book hit the Amazon bestseller list. She was sharp, pragmatic, and didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. 6 months passed. The book sold 500,000 copies. Foreign rights sold to 17 countries. A Netflix executive called about adaptation possibilities. And I was dying. I'd known for a while. The yellow tint to my eyes. The constant pain in my right side. The fact that I couldn't keep food down anymore. Only liquor. But I'd ignored it. The way I'd ignored everything that mattered for the past 2 years. The morning I collapsed in my apartment. The new one. Nicer, but still alone. I finally accepted I couldn't ignore it anymore. Detroit Receiving Hospital. Emergency room. Tests. More tests. A doctor with kind eyes and a practiced expression of professional sympathy. Mr. Baker, your liver is failing. Cirrhosis. Advanced stage. And we found tumors. Hepatocellular carcinoma. It's metastasized to your lymph nodes. Treatment options? I asked, already knowing. At this stage, palliative care. We can manage pain, make you comfortable. But Mark, she paused. Even with aggressive treatment, we'd be looking at months, not years. And given the extent of the damage, I'd say weeks. I nodded, felt nothing. Maybe I'd burned out my capacity for feeling anything other than drunk or hungover. How long? 3 weeks, maybe 4. I'm sorry. They admitted me. Put me in a room with beeping machines and fluorescent lights that never turned off completely. IV drip for fluids and morphine. A whiteboard with my nurse's name, Diane, and my doctor's name and the date, May 15th. Time moved strangely. Days and nights blended. Diane came and went. Other nurses came and went. A social worker asked if I had family to contact. I said no. Jules existed somewhere in the world, but I didn't know where, and she'd made it clear she didn't want to know where I was. My mother had stopped trying to reach me after I'd screened her calls for the 18th time. I was alone. Had been alone for a long time. This was just the official acknowledgement. The morphine made everything distant, like watching my life through frosted glass. I slept most of the time. When I was awake, I watched news on the small TV mounted to the wall. My book was still being debated. A megachurch pastor in Texas had burned copies on live stream. An atheist philosopher had written a 20,000-word essay analyzing it. I didn't care anymore. On day 16, Diane told me I had a visitor. Family? I asked, confused. He said he was a friend, wanted to check on you. She adjusted my IV. I can tell him to leave if you're not up for it. No, I said. Send him in. I expected someone from the publishing world, maybe the Netflix executive, checking if I was dying fast enough that they could claim tragically passed before seeing his vision realized in the press releases. The door opened. Samael walked in. He looked exactly the same, the perfect suit, the ageless face, those eyes that caught the fluorescent light wrong. He carried no briefcase this time, just himself. Hello, Mark, he said softly. I tried to sit up, failed, just stared at him. You're real, I whispered. Does it matter? He pulled up the visitor's chair and sat beside my bed. The story was told. That's what matters. Was it true? Any of it? He smiled. Sad, genuine. Every word. Though I suspect you'll never know for certain whether I was really there that night or whether your brilliant broken mind conjured me from desperation and whiskey. He leaned forward. Does the source of truth change the truth itself? I couldn't answer. Too tired. Too close to the end. Why are you here? I managed. To say thank you. He reached out and took my hand. His was warm. Real. 66 times I asked, Mark. 66 times I offered you this story. And finally, when you had nothing left to lose, you listened. You wrote. You published. And now... He gestured vaguely at the TV, muted but showing some talking head debating my book. Millions have heard my side, my testimony, my truth. Are you going to take my soul? I asked. Seemed like the right question. Samael laughed. Gentle, not mocking. I don't take souls, Mark. That's another misconception. Souls choose where they go. You've been choosing for years. He squeezed my hand. But I wanted you to know, what comes next, whatever it is, you won't be alone. I promise you that. The morphine was pulling me under. Or something else. My vision blurred. Was it worth it? I asked. Being the villain? Carrying that burden? Someone had to, he said quietly. Someone had to present the choice so that choosing would mean something. And yes, it was worth it. Because occasionally, someone like you comes along. Someone broken enough to hear the truth without flinching. Someone honest enough to write it down. The machines beeped. Diane would be in soon, I thought distantly. Rest now, Mark Baker, Samael said. You've earned it. You gave me my voice back. That's no small thing. Will I see you again? That depends on which version of the story is true. He stood. But I suspect wherever you're going, it won't be what you expect. It never is. The room was getting darker, not the lights dimming, my eyes closing. Thank you, I whispered. No, Mark. His voice came from very far away. Thank you. I died 3 hours later. Alone, according to the official record. Diane found me during her rounds. Time of death, 11:47 p.m., May 23rd. The obituary in the Detroit Free Press was brief. Mark Baker, 36, investigative journalist and author of the controversial bestseller The Morning Star Testament, died at Detroit Receiving Hospital. Cause of death, hepatocellular carcinoma. No immediate family. Private services. But the book remained. 500,000 copies became 1 million. Became 2 million. Academic papers were written. Documentaries were made. The question everyone asked but never answered. Had Mark Baker actually interviewed the devil? They found one additional piece of evidence in my hospital room. A small note tucked into the pocket of the clothes I died in. The handwriting wasn't mine. It read, in Latin, Veritas vos liberabit, sed primo vos vexabit. The truth will set you free, but first it will disturb you. Signed, S. Whether that note was real or planted by someone after my death, or another hallucination from a dying alcoholic's brain, no one could ever say for certain. But the story was told. The devil had been heard, and I, Mark Baker, drunk, failure, and fool, had been his scribe. That, at least, was true.